She was there, in bed, with a man she had loved for 3 years. He did everything technically right, but something inside her simply didn't work. It wasn't his fault, nor hers. It was something much deeper and more disturbing. Her mind was somewhere completely different. While he touched her, she fantasized about a completely opposite scenario, a dangerous encounter with someone who represented everything she consciously rejected. This is not an isolated story. It is the silent reality of millions of women around the world who ask themselves, why does my desire work in such a contradictory way? The answer will shock you. Female sexuality does not follow the rules we've been taught. It operates through a complex psychological system that the woman herself often does not understand. And when we uncover its secrets, everything makes sense. For decades, we tried to explain female desire using male logic. The result? Frustration, failed relationships, and women feeling defective for not responding as expected. But there is a hidden truth about how the female mind really works when it comes to sex. The first disturbing revelation: while men process desire linearly, see, feel attraction, act, women navigate a mental labyrinth where past, present, and future intertwine in a complex dance of memories, insecurities, social expectations, and secret fantasies. Imagine trying to play a game where the rules constantly change. For men, sex is like playing checkers: clear objectives, direct moves. For women, it's interdimensional chess, where each piece has multiple meanings and moves occur on several levels simultaneously. But here is the first great mystery we will unravel. Why do certain women feel irresistibly attracted to men they consciously know are terrible choices? Why does the good girl secretly fantasize about the dangerous rebel? And why do these fantasies change completely at different stages of life? The answer lies in the archetypes of female desire, deep psychological patterns that govern attraction long before consciousness is aware. There are 4 main types that dominate the female imagination, each triggering specific emotional responses. The first is the protector, someone who conveys enough strength to create security but shows selective vulnerability that awakens the female caregiving instinct. It's no coincidence that firefighters and police officers often appear in fantasies. They represent controlled power, strength directed to protect. The second archetype is even more intriguing: the man of authority. Teachers, bosses, doctors, figures who hold knowledge or social status. Here lies one of the greatest internal conflicts for women: the attraction to power versus the desire for independence. Then we arrive at the third archetype, which generates the most conflicting reactions: the bad boy. Here resides the contradiction that leaves many women confused and guilty. Why does someone who seeks stability and security feel shivers thinking about the man who represents the exact opposite? The explanation will surprise you. It's not masochism or low self-esteem. It's evolutionary biology mixed with psychological rebellion. The bad boy represents the fantasy of taming the untamable, of being the only person capable of accessing the vulnerability hidden behind apparent toughness. The fourth archetype completes the circle: the beast to be tamed. Men with unrealized potential who need fixing or guidance. This fantasy simultaneously activates the maternal instinct and the female sense of purpose. But here comes another disturbing enigma. How can a woman intensely fantasize about these figures and, at the same time, seek safe and predictable relationships? Why does what excites in fantasy not necessarily work in reality? The blame lies in a schizophrenic cultural programming that shapes women from childhood. For centuries, they were taught that desire is dangerous, that they must be proper young ladies. Then suddenly, modern culture screams, be sexually empowered. Own your desires. This contradiction creates a devastating internal conflict. The modern woman lives divided between the social expectation of being a sexual goddess and the deep programming that uncontrolled desire leads to destruction. The result? Secret fantasies that never fully align with conscious choices. And here is the secret few understand: female fantasies are rarely about what a woman wants to experience in reality. They are escape valves to explore aspects of personality that real life does not allow her to express. The independent woman fantasizes about submission. The caregiver fantasizes about being cared for. The responsible woman fantasizes about losing control. Fantasies are the playground where she explores her psychological opposites without real-world consequences. But there is something even deeper controlling all of this, something that determines when these archetypes activate and how they evolve over a lifetime. And when you discover this secret mechanism, You will understand why female sexuality seems so mysterious and contradictory. If these revelations are making you rethink everything you thought you knew about female desire, you definitely need to continue on this journey of discovery. Get ready, because what comes next will explain why some women completely lose sexual interest in long-term relationships, while others grow more passionate over time. And the answer involves a three-pillar system that works like a secret code of female sexuality. The three pillars that control female sexuality work like a bank security system. All must be aligned for the safe to open. And here is the first shocking twist. Most women don't even know half of this system operating within them. The first pillar is the psychological, and it's not just about feeling like it. It's about how the woman sees herself at that moment, what meaning she attributes to the sexual act, and whether her current identity allows her to fully let go. A woman may be physically aroused, but if psychologically she feels dirty, inadequate, or undeserving of pleasure, the system locks up completely. Here lies one of the greatest silent dramas. Women who have lost connection with their own sensuality because they internalize toxic messages about what it means to be a proper woman. They literally sabotage themselves at the most intimate moment. Imagine carrying within you a voice that constantly whispers, "Decent women don't feel that much pleasure," or "If you like it too much, something is wrong with you." This is the devastating reality for millions of women who were taught that their own desire is a betrayal of the values they are supposed to uphold. The second pillar, the physiological, holds even more disturbing secrets. The female body has responses that the woman herself is unaware of, erogenous zones that change sensitivity according to the hormonal cycle, points of pleasure that only activate under specific conditions of relaxation and trust. But here's what will shock you. Many women go their entire lives without discovering their own pleasure map because no one ever taught them that they had the right to explore it. While boys grow up naturally discovering their bodies, girls are subtly discouraged from this exploration. And then we arrive at a fascinating medical enigma. Why does the female body sometimes respond physically to stimuli that the mind consciously rejects? Why can a woman have an intense bodily response in situations that mentally disturb her? The answer lies in the difference between arousal and desire. The female body can react automatically to physical stimuli, reflexive arousal, while the mind is completely disconnected or even resistant, absence of real desire. This revolutionary scientific discovery explains why many women feel like traitors to their own bodies. The third pillar is the most complex, the cognitive. While men can turn off their brains during sex, women maintain a constant mental conversation. They analyze, compare, question, plan, all simultaneously with what should be a moment of total surrender. Is he enjoying it? Am I doing it right? How does my body look in this position? What if someone hears us? What does this mean for our relationship? Will he respect me afterward? This avalanche of thoughts is not neurosis, it's female social programming operating in real time. But here comes the twist no one expected. This cognitive problem is actually a disguised superpower. The ability to process multiple layers of information simultaneously allows women to have infinitely richer and more complex sexual experiences than men, when they manage to channel this capacity in their favor. The secret lies in understanding that the female brain doesn't need to be turned off during sex. It needs to be directed. When a woman learns to use her analytical ability to amplify sensations rather than question them, she accesses levels of pleasure men can't even imagine exist. Now we arrive at the most revolutionary concept, concordance. This is the specific sequence of emotional triggers that must be activated for a woman to fully surrender. And no, it doesn't start in the bedroom. It can start 3 days earlier. Female concordance works like a symphony. Each instrument, emotional security, intellectual admiration, sexual tension, personal validation, must enter at the right moment to create the complete experience. A man can jump straight to the guitar solo. A woman needs the entire orchestra in tune. But here arises the final great mystery. Why do the archetypes that awaken a woman change drastically over her life? Why does the same person who melted for the mysterious rebel at 20 only care about men who show stability and competence at 35? The answer lies in sophisticated evolutionary programming that adapts desires to the needs of each life stage. In youth, when a woman is exploring her identity, she is drawn to archetypes that represent adventure and discovery, the mysterious, controlled danger, the seductive unknown. As she matures and her priorities change, the archetypes evolve to reflect deeper needs: security to build a future, competence to be a true partner, emotional stability to face challenges together. But here's the twist that will make you furious. Society teaches women that this natural evolution is being opportunistic or losing spontaneity. They are judged for changing their attraction criteria as they mature, as if it were a character flaw rather than evolutionary wisdom. The result? Women forcing themselves to maintain teenage attraction standards well past their 30s, denying their own psychological evolution, and sabotaging relationships that could be deeply fulfilling. This toxic social programming creates a vicious cycle, mature women feeling guilty for no longer being aroused by the same stimuli from youth, when they should be celebrating the refinement of their tastes and the sophistication of their desires. The truth is that a 35-year-old woman who only cares about men who can be true partners is not boring. She is evolutionarily smart. Her archetypes have adapted to her real needs, not the ghosts of who she was 2 decades ago. But all these revelations lead us to the most critical moment of this journey, when all these systems, the archetypes, the 3 pillars, concordance, and natural evolution, finally align perfectly. And what happens at this moment will redefine everything you thought you knew about the intensity of female desire. Now the brutal truth about why certain women feel irresistibly attracted to men they consciously know are terrible choices. Archetypes don't choose partners, they choose emotional experiences. The bad boy doesn't represent a desirable future, he represents the fantasy of feeling completely alive through controlled danger. The good girl doesn't actually want the dangerous rebel. She wants to access her own repressed rebellion through him. It is psychological projection disguised as attraction. When we understand this, the contradiction disappears. She isn't choosing the wrong man, she is using him as a portal to parts of herself she was never allowed to explore. The explanation for the schizophrenia between fantasy and reality lies in a revolutionary psychological discovery. Women developed the ability to compartmentalize desire as a survival mechanism. For centuries, expressing sexuality openly was literally dangerous. So they created a mental safe, where they could explore forbidden desires without real risks. Modern fantasies still operate within this ancestral security system. That's why a powerful executive can fantasize about total submission, not because she is masochistic, but because her mind has created a safe space to explore the opposite of her daily reality. It is evolutionary genius, not contradiction. And here we reach the most liberating moment of this journey, when a woman finally understands that her contradictory fantasies are not signs of mental confusion or emotional imbalance. They are evidence of a sophisticated psyche that has found creative ways to stay psychologically balanced in a culture that has always punished authentic female sexual expression. Her strange fantasies don't need to be cured or repressed. They need to be honored as part of a psychological system smarter than any self-help manual ever imagined. The reason the female body sometimes responds to stimuli the mind rejects lies in a revolutionary neuroscientific discovery. The female nervous system processes sexual arousal through multiple neural pathways that do not always communicate in real time. Genital responses can occur milliseconds before conscious processing. This means a woman can have an intense physical reaction before her mind even decides whether it approves of the situation. It is not body betrayal, it is a difference in neurological processing speed. This discovery frees millions of women from the guilt of responding wrong in ambiguous situations. Their bodies are not sabotaging their minds, they are operating on neural systems with different timings. The radical shift of archetypes over a lifetime is not a loss of spontaneity, it is neurological maturation. The female brain continues to develop new connections well into the 30s, especially in areas responsible for risk assessment and future planning. At 20, when these areas are still forming, attraction to danger and mystery makes neurological sense. The brain prioritizes exploration and gathering experiences. At 35, when the prefrontal cortex reaches full maturity, attraction to stability and competence reflects neural sophistication, not emotional laziness. The woman who evolves her tastes is honoring her own brain development, not betraying herself. And now we reach the ultimate moment, when the 3 pillars align perfectly with the woman's dominant archetype in her current life stage, under ideal concordance conditions. What happens transcends any limited definition of sexual pleasure. Psychologically, she feels completely accepted and valued in her essence. Physiologically, every nerve ending in her body responds in perfect harmony. Cognitively, her analytical mind becomes an ally, amplifying every sensation instead of questioning it. In this state, female sexuality reveals its true nature. It is not a complicated version of the male system, but a completely different system, infinitely more sophisticated and potentially more intense. A woman in this state of total alignment accesses levels of ecstasy that redefine her understanding of what the human body can feel. This is why trying to apply male logic to female sexuality is like trying to play a Beethoven symphony with a kazoo. It's not that it doesn't work, it's that it wastes an instrument infinitely more powerful and complex. The female capacity to connect emotion, intellect, memory, fantasies, and physical sensation into a single transcendent experience is not unnecessary complication. It is human sexual evolution in its most advanced state. But here is the most disturbing revelation of all. Most women live their entire lives without ever experiencing this complete alignment. Not due to personal failure, but because they were never taught that this state was possible, much less how to access it. They spend decades accepting crumbs of pleasure, thinking this is just how it is for women, while carrying within them a potential for ecstasy that would make any male experience seem one-dimensional by comparison. The tragedy is not that they are complicated, it's that they have been convinced to settle for a microscopic fraction of their true capacity for pleasure. As if they possessed a Stradivarius and spent their lives trying to make music from it using only one string. What we have discovered is not just about sexuality, it is about awakening a human potential that has been systematically denied and underestimated. And when a woman finally understands and accesses this complete system, she doesn't just transform her sexual life. She reconnects with a version of herself she didn't even know existed, more powerful, more integrated, more alive than she ever imagined possible. And this transformation has consequences far beyond the bedroom, redefining how she relates to herself and the world. But to get there, she must first break the invisible chains that keep her imprisoned in an impoverished version of her own sexuality. The chains that bind female sexuality are not made of metal, they are built from words whispered across generations. Proper girls don't do that. If you like it too much, something is wrong. Your value is in being desired, not in desiring. Each seemingly innocent phrase becomes a psychological shackle operating in the subconscious for decades. The first key to liberation is radical in its simplicity, recognizing that having complex and contradictory desires is not a character flaw, it is a sign of a rich and sophisticated psyche. A woman who fantasizes about situations she would consciously reject is not confused. She is accessing the totality of her human experience through the only safe pathway she has found. The second revolutionary step is to stop trying to fix fantasies that seem problematic. Instead, decipher what they truly represent. Fantasizing about the bad boy is rarely about wanting a destructive man, it is about yearning for the courage to be reckless. Fantasizing about submission for a powerful woman is not masochism, it is the desire to experience the relief of not having to control everything for a few moments. Imagine carrying for years the shame of fantasies that seemed to contradict who you thought you were. Imagine judging yourself as abnormal for desires that were actually evidence of a creative mind trying to maintain psychological balance. The compassion each woman needs for herself at this moment of discovery is not a luxury, it is an urgent necessity for healing decades of sexual self-sabotage. When a woman finally understands the functioning of her three pillars, each transforms from obstacle into a tool of power. The psychological pillar stops being a minefield of insecurities and becomes a territory of deep self-knowledge. Instead of asking, "Am I being proper?" she learns to question, "What is my psyche trying to communicate through this desire?" Each fantasy becomes a clue about unintegrated aspects of her personality seeking expression. The physiological pillar is freed from the shackles of ignorance about her own body. She stops expecting others to decode her physical responses and takes responsibility for becoming an expert in her own anatomy of pleasure. She discovers that her body is not a puzzle to be solved by others, but a sophisticated instrument she herself can master. The cognitive pillar, once a source of constant anxiety, becomes a powerful ally. Instead of trying to turn off her mind during intimate moments, she learns to consciously direct it. Her thoughts stop being unwanted intruders and become intentional amplifiers of the experience. But the most radical transformation occurs when she understands that concordance is not unnecessary complication, it is her sexual superpower. While male sexuality operates like a simple switch on-off, female sexuality functions like a professional mixing console, with dozens of controls that, when properly adjusted, produce unimaginably rich experiences. She stops apologizing for needing so much context to fully surrender. Instead, she begins to honor her need for emotional construction, recognizing it as a feature of a more sophisticated sexual system, not a defect to be corrected. And then something extraordinary happens. When a woman fully embraces the complexity of her own sexuality, When she stops trying to fit it into male molds or limiting social expectations, she doesn't just transform her intimate life. She awakens a personal power she didn't even know she possessed. A woman connected with her true sexual nature radiates a magnetic energy that transcends any seduction technique or relationship strategy. She stops seeking external validation because she has found an inexhaustible internal source of self-esteem based on genuine self-knowledge. When she understands that her attraction archetypes naturally evolve as she matures, she frees herself from the prison of trying to maintain adolescent desires in an adult body and mind. She celebrates each phase as an expansion of her emotional sophistication, not as a loss of spontaneity. The 25-year-old woman aroused by mystery and danger is no more free than the 40-year-old drawn to competence and stability. They are different versions of the same person, each responding to the evolutionary wisdom of her life stage. Both are perfect in their contexts. The true female sexual revolution is not about imitating male sexuality or following empowerment formulas created by others. It is about each woman discovering and fully honoring her own internal system of desire, no matter how complex, contradictory, or evolutionary it may seem. When we stop trying to simplify female sexuality and begin to celebrate its inherent sophistication, we not only free women from centuries of repression disguised as protection, we elevate the standard of human intimacy to a level that benefits everyone involved. Imagine a world where women grow up knowing that their complex desires are characteristics of sophisticated minds, not problems to be solved. Where they learn early on to decipher the codes of their own bodies and minds. Where the natural evolution of their attraction archetypes is seen as psychological maturation, not a betrayal of their true nature. In this world, relationships become dances between two people who deeply understand their own sexual natures, creating symphonies of intimacy impossible when even one partner is disconnected from themselves. This is not just a journey about sex. It is about a generation of women finally reconnecting with aspects of themselves that were systematically denied, repressed, and misunderstood. It is about undoing centuries of conditioning that convinced half of humanity that their most intimate nature was flawed or unnecessarily complicated. Every woman who frees herself from these invisible chains not only transforms her own experience, she becomes a beacon for others still navigating the darkness of sexual disconnection. Her awakening creates ripples that touch daughters, friends, colleagues, producing a cascade effect of collective liberation. The secrets of female sexual fantasies reveal a truth that transcends the bedroom. Women are not complicated versions of men. They are beings with a fully unique psychological and physiological architecture, capable of intimacy and ecstasy experiences that redefine the limits of what it means to be human. When we finally honor this truth, when we stop trying to fix female sexuality and begin to celebrate its inherent magnificence, we not only heal generations of unnecessary sexual trauma, we unlock a collective potential for human connection that can literally transform how our species relates. The revolution is not in denying female complexity. It is in finally recognizing it as the evolutionary masterpiece it has always been. If this journey has awakened something deep in you, do not let these revelations go to waste. Share, discuss, implement. Because everyone who truly understands female sexuality becomes an agent of a cultural transformation that our society desperately needs. And subscribe to the channel to continue exploring the deepest mysteries of human nature.